welcome to the Crossroads. I'm your host, Angela Rajnigandha. And so today I just thought we would talk about the Fae, and I wanted to share some of my personal experiences with working with the Fae. And so let's start just going over who are the Fae. The term Fae refers to types of otherworldly beings, including fairies and nymphs and dryads and brownies and gnomes and elves and goblins and other mystical creatures. They come in many forms. Some will look human-like, others will look really creepy and scary, and some can even shapeshift. But even fairies rarely look how they're often depicted, as these tiny, cute little beings with wings and spreading their fairy dust. In my experience, they look much more raw and weathered and natural and earthy looking. And if you're familiar with the artwork of Brian Froud, this is very much how I tend to see them and how many others report seeing the Fae. And if you're not familiar, go look him up. He has done some amazing artwork of fairies and gnomes and goblins, and he's also worked in movies like The Dark Crystal and The Labyrinth back in the 80s. His work has a very distinct look to it. When you see it, you know it's him. And his way of viewing the Fae is very much how I view them as well. But the Fae belong to the other world realms that run parallel to ours. And some can cross between these realms and create moments where humans might encounter them. Or if you're a person like me who is able to peer into these other realms, you may have seen them yourself as well. Fae are deeply tied to nature, and they're not necessarily either good or bad, but they're very unpredictable. Some can be very playful, but some can also be very vengeful. And they should always be approached with caution and respect. Now, I've been aware of the Fae ever since I was a small child. I saw them at night. They would kind of play around in my pillows, trying to get my attention, and I would see them dart in and out of, the side of my vision. And I would catch little sparkles and orbs out of the corners of my eye. And I always just knew what they were. And I knew these were fairies. And you'll hear me often refer to all of the Fae as fairies. I never really felt the need to decipher one type from another, whether it's a nymph or a brownie or a fairy or whatever. I kind of just work with them all in the same way. So I tend to just refer to them as the Fae or fairies. But it's so interesting that even as a young child, so many of us knew that you don't talk about these things that you see. We knew it would not be believed or it would not be accepted, even though in our hearts we knew it was very, very true. And so I wouldn't talk about it much as a child, but as I got older, I actually started catching them on my security cameras. And I still have footage of the orbs in my basement. They seem to like to play and hide in all of the boxes that I had stored down there. And I even have footage of them interacting with my cats. I have this one video of an orb slowly creeping up behind one of my cats, and then it kind of nipped her in the butt, and then she jumped up, startled, and then ran away. They always seem to pick on her specifically, and I'm not sure why, but there are so many folktales of fairies and cats not getting along. And they never really cause any harm or problems with my cats, really. And I know many people are going to say that the orbs I'm seeing in the camera are just bugs or the camera playing tricks with light or whatever. And honestly, I just don't care. I know what I've seen and I know what is true for me, so I don't need to hear it. And there was one time where I had been meditating, and so like my third eye is just wide open and I was feeling just high as a kite. And I walk out of my room after closing out the session, and I don't think I was quite grounded yet, but I was passing this little console table that I had in my foyer, and on this table there was a small little display bowl of crystals. And right as I passed the table, I saw an orb shoot out of this bowl of crystals across the room, and then it whipped off into the other direction. And when it took off from the bowl of crystals, the bowl actually shook. It rattled. I could hear it and I could see it. But what's so funny is that my ex-husband saw it too. We were married at the time, but he was standing in the kitchen and we had like a big open floor plan. And when it shot out of there and I saw it whip around, it startled me. And I said, "Did you see that?" And he actually said, yeah, what the hell was that? But he quickly dismissed it as light playing tricks and things like that. And how light would actually shake the bowl of crystals, I have no idea. But he's a man of science. He doesn't believe in this stuff, never has. And that's okay. I know what I saw. That's all that matters. But another interesting thing about that, as I was thinking about it, is how when you meditate and you raise your vibration into that state, you don't just raise your vibration, but you raise the vibration of the entire space, of the entire house, and then even the people around you, which I think is why he could actually see this thing too. Because he normally wouldn't see things like that, which I think is really cool to think about because how your spiritual practice doesn't just change you, but it changes the people around you, the space around you. And when you think about the trickle effect of that and how just big of a difference your own spiritual practice can make on the entire world around you. And people are always asking me how they can best help the world spiritually or energetically. And I always say by healing yourself, by dealing with your own shit, by fixing your own life. That is what will have the biggest impact on the world. But that's another topic. We'll go into that another day. But anyway, um, as time went on, I started to work with the Fae more intentionally. I started talking to them, and I would leave out little offerings for them. And as a shamanic practitioner, I would journey to go see them and to speak with them. And when I started doing this, a spirit guide came forth, and he is kind of this little troll-like being. He's just a little bit shorter than I am, and he offered his help to serve as kind of a translator between me and the Fae, helping me to understand them and vice versa. And while I often can hear them when I'm in a journey in this state, for some of the Fae beings, it seems like their language just doesn't quite translate. And so he started helping me to be able to communicate with them very clearly. And he even gave me this small little bag of coins that I wore on my hip. And he explained to me that the Fae appreciate payment for their assistance. And it was through this that I was able to really build a solid relationship with them. I would go to them and I would ask for help with house problems or land issues, and I would ask them to protect me and my home and just all sorts of stuff. And they've always been so excited to be of help. But I will say that working with the Fae is not for everyone. I think that the type of relationship you have with the Fae greatly depends on who you are on a soul level, your soul's lineage. And I personally have deep, deep soul ties in the underworld and in these lower other worlds. And I think that the Fae kind of have a respect for me because of that. There's just a connection there and a familiarity where someone who maybe works primarily in like the higher angelic realms, they may not be as able to have a strong connection with the Fae of these much lower realms. And neither is necessarily good or bad, it's kind of just a different thing. But regardless of who you are, the Fae will treat you as you treat them. If you offend them, knowingly or not, there are consequences. You might notice objects going missing, you may notice your food spoiling quickly, or your houseplants dying, your garden dying, having house problems, things breaking all around you, and you may even feel like small pokes and pinches. And there are actually old tales of fairies harming pets and children and things like that. Now, that's not something I've ever experienced, but maybe some have. But I find when treated with respect, they can be very powerful allies. And like I've said, I've asked for their help with gardening and land issues, pest control, protection, and I've even asked them to help me find a new home. When I moved, they guided me to a place that not only suited me and my needs, but that also needed my help in return energetically with land clearing and things like that. And so let's talk about how to get on the good side of the Fae. In my experience, the Fae love to be acknowledged and they love offerings. The Fae appreciate gifts and they do have their preferences. In my experience, they like sweets and chocolates and cakes and tea, fruit, wine, flowers, milk, honey, and then things like coins and shiny trinkets. I made the habit of leaving small offerings on an altar in my garden or at the edge of the woods, and I'll leave them little things there. And it was so cute. This one time in a journey, I asked that helper guide what they like best for offerings. And before he could even answer, I heard this teeny little voice chirp up just off to the side here, and it said, "We like wine." And I thought it was the cutest thing. And so I always try to make sure that I have wine for them. And now their preferences may differ among different types of fae or different areas you live, or I don't know. These are what the fae in my area seem to like from me. And they also do really appreciate an inviting atmosphere. Outside, they really do seem to enjoy twinkle lights and wind chimes and music and dancing and bonfires or outdoor festivals and just things like that. And then indoors, I find they like the crystals, just like that one was playing in my bowl of crystals. And they like art and very metallic accents. And they do have a tendency to like to play or hide in very messy or cluttered spaces. And now, one of the most important things I've learned is that you need to respect their space. My guide showed me that I need to warn them before altering the land. I need to give them a heads up before cutting the grass or removing plants or digging up things or chopping anything down or just disturbing these natural spaces because it can really upset them and disturb them. And I was shown specifically that mowing the lawn really startles them and disrupts them. They really, really appreciate a heads up before we start mowing the lawn. And I was also shown that they really didn't like when I was disposing of salt that was left over from rituals and spells that I was doing outside. This apparently messes with the energy of their space, and they really didn't like it. And so they're able to communicate that with me. And ever since, I've made sure to put salt either in the trash or down the drain and to not put it outside. And you can also ask in return that they also respect your space. I've asked them not to take and hide my things. Do not hurt my cats. And please tell me when I'm in journey if they don't like something I'm doing instead of simply retaliating. Communication and boundaries are really important when working with the Fae. Talk to them, ask them to let you know if something that you're doing is bothering them. They seem to really appreciate just that intent and that effort. But also be firm. Not every Fae is friendly. Some can be tricksters. Some can have really, really bad intentions. I one time did have an unfamiliar Fae try to interact with me outside of my usual kind of guided communication. And I immediately sensed that this being did not have good intentions. And so I shut it down immediately. You really need to have good, strong boundaries and intuition if you're going to work with the Fae. If you're at all easily manipulated or you're really wanting too hard to build a relationship with them, you may just be asking for trouble. But if you feel a strong connection with the Fae and you do want to work with them, you just need to start small and build the relationship up slowly. Start with just talking to them. Leave out little offerings, show them that you respect them and that you respect their space. And over time, the relationship can grow. And you can feel out what kind of relationship it could be and maybe where you need to have strong boundaries. And as with any spirit work, always trust your intuition. If something feels off, it is. If something feels warm and good, then you can lean into that. The Fae respond to your intention, your consistency, and your respect. If you stay grounded and keep your boundaries clear, they can become very powerful and protective allies. And with that, thank you for joining me here today. And please share the experiences that you've had with the Fae. I want to hear about the good experiences and the bad experiences and the weird and confusing experiences. Tell me all of it. And until next time, I'll meet you at the crossroads. Bye. Thank you for joining me at the crossroads. Visit me at arcanapothecary.com and connect on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and please join my Patreon for more exclusive content that I don't share anywhere else. Please note that this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not professional advice. Remember, there is a time for love and light, and there is a time for raising hell. Until next time, I'll meet you at the crossroads.